say a four-part question here. So with so like an interrelated connection between the points. So with this particular person, they said, how does Dharma practice and meditation help in everyday lay life? And I'd imagine most of you should have seen the benefits. If you've been, so for example, you've been practicing for at least a couple of months, you should see the way sort of it affects you emotionally, psychologically. I mean, so meditation in itself has a lot of benefits, and people tend to see the emotional benefit as the one that tends to stand out the most. They have a sense of over time, like probably maybe at least say 3-6 months, greater say emotional stability. Instead of the mind sort of running to wild, so like extremes of emotion, extremes of mood and thought, that one has more stability and a sense of balance, because that's what you're actually doing with the training. The meditation is like a system of training. It may be multifaceted, but this business of retraining one's attention. So when you're doing the meditation practice, instead of allowing one's mind to go all over the place, you're holding your attention in a relaxed way in one place, or within a say like a confined parameter. And the psychological effect of this, that with one's personal makeup, regardless of whether one is very, say, emotionally passionate or intense, or whether one is maybe an emotionally cool individual, you get a greater sense of stability, because the training effect on the mind is that by holding one's, even though it's a very simple practice, it has a multifaceted effect. So when you hold your attention in one place, that means that through the rest of the course of your day, your daily experience, the mind doesn't move so much to extremes. By keeping the mind, say, on one point with meditation practice, in a parameter, because of the conditioning effect, the training effect, the mind doesn't go basically all over the place and thinking about maybe 1,000 and, people may think about 1,001 things, but the intensity of one's experience is not as much for an individual who doesn't do any practice whatsoever. So the immediate, so what do we actually see? So we see this a state of emotional balance through the training effect, but what is it? So when we look at the wide range of emotions we go through, you start especially over easily 3 to 6 months, you start to see changes in that person's emotional makeup. So you find that it's like the pebble in the stream kind of principle, where the water, say the cooling water of the stream or the river, gradually wears down the rough edges of the pebbles, say like in the riverbed. And so if you've got an individual who's very could be very or even obnoxious and insensitive and impatient, sort of unpleasant personal characteristics, that over time, you get them practicing for 3 months, and I can absolutely guarantee that you'll see a change in their character, because the mind becomes more refined, it becomes more sensitive, more intuitive, and those rough edges start to get smoothed off over time. I mean, some people, you should see, if you've got somebody who's practicing every day, you should see significant changes over the course of, say, 12 months. You should spot it straight away. And a gradual refining of one's character, because, you're, how can I explain it? As you're cultivating the mind and you're refining, see, as one develops the practice, one is refining the state of the mind. You are refining one's emotions. So, it's a well-known fact that Buddhist people, the tendency is they tend to be reasonably nice people, hopefully. This is just a common sort of expectation that we see in Buddhist culture, that Buddhist people are reasonably nice people compared with the general fraternity. But that comes through, that it's not like a multi-level training effect where any genuine Buddhist practitioner makes an effort with the precepts to the best of their ability. They're doing a bit of study, chanting. They have a belief and awareness of karma and rebirth. So they're a bit more careful when they're relating to people, the way they treat people, because they know that whatever energy that they project out into the world is going to come full circle and come back to them. And depending on the karma, I mean, it might be very, very unpleasant. So we have this, and sort of the underlying awareness as well, that over time that you sense that, all of us are interconnected. And even before the event of the internet and Facebook and all these other things, that when so for example, you've been meditating for 5 years on a daily basis, that individual will have a better personal connection with the people around them. They have this, it's like an emotional intelligence. So you not only have like sensitivity, intuition, but you have the ability to engage people and read their moods and connect with them, and the ability to communicate and it could be anything. It could be sharing information, dialogue, or whatnot. And so you have a human being who's more effective in their social interaction, and so as one goes about one's daily life, that one's personal relationships with other people tend to be of a more meaningful quality. And when people they go to work and they're mixing with their family, I mean, sometimes on a worldly level we can be quite, general people can be quite superficial, and they may say certain things but they really mean something else, or they don't keep their promises, or you may not necessarily feel that you can trust them with your very life, which might be too much to ask. But that particular individual will find it much easier to make friends. They find it much easier to draw a sense of trust from other people, because people aren't silly. You can when you're mixing with people, you know when someone is okay, or if they're a decent human being, and you can relate to them in a very sort of in a very like a human level, the quality of the engagement. And so you're looking at this not only with the meditation in itself is quite simple, the meditation techniques that we do, but the effect can be quite, call it, say, profound, quite substantial over the years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because the effects of the meditation go right through your personality. They can touch every aspect of your mind, from, say, from a surface to an intermediate level. And so people, you're looking at, it's almost like a measure for measure. People who have incredibly deep meditation will get that corresponding effect. There'll be a really deep, profound effect on the mind, and especially the wisdom faculty. For people who have very deep meditation and they contemplate accordingly, that when you see them in action, when you see them walk and talk, when you see them deal with problems, with stress, other people's stuff, you see an aspect of wisdom in action. The quality of say the reflective quality of a person's meditation. If you want to know how good a person's practice is, just watch the way they engage other people, and that will give you quite a reasonable indication where that person is at. You know, the way they speak to people, the way they treat them, how well they connect with them, how well they understand them, and you know, even the whole thing with body language when you're engaging someone, do they really feel that you're connecting with them, that you understand their perspective, their point of view. So you're looking at, say, quality of human relationship, and when you look at, say, the decision-making process, regardless of whether you're a business person or a health professional, that the wisdom and the sensitivity and the intuition that you obtain within the meditation, it affects the decisions that, both your motivations and the decisions that you make in everyday life. And I've had at least a handful of people tell me that when, for example, if they meditate in the evening, or maybe even a short meditation, 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the morning, depending how busy they are, that the quality of the decisions that they make and their ability to problem solve is actually more effective than what they would usually be capable of if they didn't have time to practice at all. And so you see this kind of sort of multifaceted effect, and even with the physical body, that the meditation it has the potential to bring down people's blood pressure, and even things like peripheral circulation, and an ability to diminish cancer and regulate blood, help to stabilize blood sugar, reducing even like muscular tension in the body induced by stress, and sometimes even aches and pains, because they're I'm not on the internet very much at all, but they find that meditation is effective. They've got this a study I checked out about 12 months back, and to deal with say chronic pain in the body. So the therapists engaged in that particular practice, they probably use some kind of like a specialty kind of meditative technique to deal with chronic pain, either disease process or old age or joint trouble. So when you look at the effect on the brain, the physiology of the body, you're going to get a change in, say, brain chemicals and hormone levels, and the glandular activity and regulation. So you're going to get a number of health benefits there. People who meditate, they tend to look younger than they are, say, in reality. And it comes from from this not only the state of mind, but also an improved, say, circulation and the quality of the qi. And it's something they've been able to measure with Tibetan monks, and using that specific equipment, that meditation actually increases the qi field which surrounds the body, and they can measure the change over time. So like an increase in strength and an increase in both the flow and the quality of the qi as it moves through one's meridians. So what are the benefits of deep meditation practice in day-to-day life? So I've probably gone over quite a few of those. But so it'll be that similar principle accordingly. So that overall effect on the mind and the body, and the deeper you go with the practice, the greater the effect that you see. And naturally in the world, it's not that easy to get very, very deep samadhi, because of just the level of sensory input, the amount of stuff which is coming in to your mind, through your senses in the external environment. it's very hard to, to sort of quieten that down, and that's why, like retreat centers and monasteries are far more conducive for meditation practice, because many of us, we have to sort of, like rewind and then process all that stuff, all that material which has come in through our senses. And part of the reason why we keep thinking about all that stuff, those conversations and the shopping trips and the appointments and all this kind of stuff, telephone calls that we've attended to, we've moved on, and we keep, for choice of better words, we keep regurgitating and going over these events. And this particular question came up with one of the meditation masters in Thailand, and he said one of the underlying principles was for the brain to actually assimilate the memories and place them correctly in your file system, so within one's own mind. And that was just one comment that he made. It's a part of an organization of say memory, both placement, patterns, location. But the thing is, even for yourself, when you recall certain, say, memories, if you, say for example, if you close, you could probably even do it with, say, closed eyes, and you think of different people, and you'll find those people in different places, say inside your mind. The person will be located maybe towards this right upper hemisphere, and then my mum might be, could be down low on the left side, and the mind in itself, on a very deep level, it's like a small universe. It's very, very spacious. When you get into deep samadhi, the mind is like a small universe as your attention moves inwards. So the brain does have an accessory function when it comes to, say, like memory and remembering, but the mind is the key principle when it comes to your experience and the remembrance of one's experience. I can't say exactly where the limit is, because to give you an idea, that classic story that Ajahn Brahm mentioned years ago, doing a study at one of the universities in I think it was it in the UK or the States, and what happened was a particular student had an abnormally shaped cranium, and they were doing this study on cranium, say size, shape, and like intelligence, and so they put the young man under like a scanning machine, and supposedly he, many of you know this, he had no real substantial brain tissue formation. He had this kind of like a layered brain, which it was a fluid-filled brain sac, and then he had like a reptilian brain cell. But he was quite intelligent. He was doing well with his studies, well adjusted socially, but there was a major absence of brain tissue. But they couldn't, the researchers couldn't see any difference whatsoever within the personality and the intelligence tests. And so the mind in itself, the mind is largely responsible for memory, cognition, our reactions, our habits, this and that, and the brain has an accessory function. So getting into deep states of meditation while still trying to balance the possibility of really developing with the practice that it's the main thing which obstructs people is if you look at all the things which basically makes meditation difficult, and it comes down to a couple of factors, and it comes down to the amount of stuff which you've got coming in through your senses, because you're going to remember, like you've got this movie running continually, running through one's senses, and all those events and those people and those times and places, it's all there. It's all being recorded inside one's mind. If you've got, you get a person under a professional hypnotherapist, as you well understand, you can find out exactly what the person was doing. Maybe it could be like even 12 months ago, what they had for lunch, or maybe the people that they saw on a particular day. So the memory storage, what the professional people who specialize in mnemonics, in these kind of superpower memory techniques, say that all that information is there, but it's a matter of the ability to access. So you've got all your whole life experience coming through you, not only this life but past lives, and it's all there. All that stuff is there, those memories, events, and even the Buddha, the Buddha recollected something like 94 previous kalpas, and you're looking at 94 expansions and contractions of the universe. Say 94 eons. You just imagine that, 94 expansions and contractions of the universe, and he was doing that was specifically for insight practice. And then he realized that there was no end to this. You could, I don't know, with the Buddhists, I don't think there's any limit when the level of one's spiritual qualities are at absolute maximum, the maximum range, 100%. So whatever underlying qualities that you see in enlightened teachers, masters, the Buddha is the top rank. You cannot go any higher as far as fulfillment of, say, spiritual capability, no matter what you look at, whether it's patience, the ability to teach, psychic potential, anything you can possibly think of within a spiritual sense. The Buddhas have taken their development to the absolute maximum across the field. Call it, say, the 10 paramis. The 10 paramis is, you do see it in quite a number of books and volumes and this and that, but essentially it was a scholarly invention that was actually drawn from the suttas, drawn from people's experiences, drawn from events, but you do see it, coming up in, even with high-class scholars. They still go into detail with these things, because these are the kind of qualities that you actually see in fully enlightened, or even either partially or fully enlightened human beings. And so another principle. So you not only got this sensory input coming in that you're processing continually, and which is being placed in some, like a pattern, like a memory pattern within one's own mind, and it's connected. You can even with mnemonics, you can link things quite easily if you develop the skills, and but also past karma. You've got connections with people. You've got connections with places. People can go through the course of their lives, and they can be drawn to different countries at different times. I remember when I was young, I had a fascination with Japan, and then later on it was say like Thailand. But Australia, feels like my spiritual home, even though I was interested in Japan, Thailand. I practiced in monasteries. That in the long term, I felt that Australia was my spiritual home. So people have all these attachments, and they have all these connections, like in the past, and these things also, will lead to a sense of clinging and attachment. They bubble up from a deeper layer in the mind. So it's not only the current events, but all the past karma that you're moving through. It's all the stuff you've gone through in the past, and the events and the people, experiences. That stuff is still bubbling up slowly up into the conscious level. You can trigger connections, in the past. People with deep meditation may see this more easily. So you've just got the incredible amount of stuff in one's mind, and you've got to be able to let that go on the surface level to really get very, very deep levels of meditation. And in reality, you've got to abandon the 5 sense world. You've as a minimum, you've got to let go of this world and all the people and all the stuff and all the things that you love and hate, And I mean, all that's basically got to be put to one side, otherwise you can't get into this very deep, profound, one-pointed samadhi where the mind it doesn't move. I mean, the reason why your mind moves in everyday life and it moves in meditation is because you're attached to things. You've got this emotional connection with things. So if you were, say, like if you were very, very cool, like cool as a cucumber, that you would find it much easier to get very, very tranquil. And people who have, if people say to you, oh, I've got very, very good meditation and this and that, that's one of the classic signs that no one can basically, they can't fool you. If people who have very deep meditation, they tend to be emotionally cool, even under pressure. So mainstream people still have the potential for deep meditation, but for people who've really got really solid, profound meditation, that the level of attachment, they move very, very lightly, very, very freely in this world. They're attached to nothing and nobody. I should correct myself. There's still a sense of care and compassion, but these kind of feelings are a much more deeper level. They're on a much more on a much more pure level. It's a very altruistic, very unselfish kind of motivations. The way they relate to other people. It's not like they're being like nice to you because they're trying to get something out of you. They're being nice to you because that is the pure feeling which comes from their heart. And so they really, people at that level, they're like people like maybe, like very, very highly, the highly developed saints within or the leading saints within the Christian fraternity, or possibly, especially maybe Hindu and Jewish and possibly Muslim, the real practitioners who spend hours, practicing. But there could be, there's other complicated issues there. But so you see that the overall people, just that main thing, like the attachments in this world, that's the thing that's going to slow you down and is going to hinder you. So you have to work with your meditation practices in a way which gets you good, gets you results that you can see over time. Most people need like probably about 12 months before they may feel that their meditation is quite reasonable. Certain, they could, especially if you're on a 7-9 day retreat, you can really get some really good quality practice rolling, and because of the time scale. So that, those first 3 points, whether they can all be related to karma and rebirth. So so every time you move, every time you think, speak, move your physical body, essentially you're generating karma under the power of intention. Every time you do anything whatsoever, your mind is moving. Your mind is moving and shifting under the power of say, intention, under the power of one's feelings, and so you're generating karma continually. This whole process is very, very complex. You've got all this karma that you have that you've generated in past lives. You've got karma that you're generating now, which basically has a cause and effect principle. So in a nutshell, whatever energy that you project out into the world, all the feelings and all the ideas and the views and opinions and the way you look at people and the comparisons, all this stuff it's slowly it's going to come back to you, and it's going to affect you. And so you get this incredible complexity that only the Buddha could understand 100% of people in every single circumstance. Even his second level disciples could never know exactly where every single person was at in their practice. And just because of the sheer complexity, incredible amount of karma and cause and effects, it's one of the, in the sutras, it's one of these unfathomable. They call it the four unfathomables, contemplation of people's karma, the depth of jhana samadhi, and there's two others I can't remember. But yeah, you can't, this kind of stuff, you just can't think it through. It's just too, just too complex. So, but the thing is that when it comes to it's good when you look at the course of your life and what you're actually going through. It's really worth focusing on the present moment, because that's when you're actually making things happen. So the future, you don't want to be thinking about the past and the future excessively, because it could just spin your mind round and round endlessly. You have to think, you have to act, you have to do stuff, take care of responsibilities, but you don't want to think any more than you really need to, because it's a complete waste of mental energy and it just disturbs your peace of mind. So what you need to be aiming for is, with the training effect, with the meditation, is when you need the mind to work, you do stuff, take care of business, people, whatever you have on your plate in the course of your life. And then as soon as your responsibilities are finished, the mind just automatically goes to a state of rest. And so you're looking at the training effect. I would imagine people who've been practicing for, lay life is not, it's not the most conducive environment for meditation practice. It's workable, but not so easy. But people who've been practicing consistently for 5 years, they should see this. They may not see it all the time, but they should feel that kind of experience where they're busy, they're doing things, they're thinking, moving, chatting, engaging people, this and that. But as soon as you stop, the mind just stops and it goes still. And like most of you guys have been practicing for at least 5 years, you should be able to see that. And it is a good insight, because it means you've got the potential just to shut the mind down temporarily, because in that quiet space you've actually got some rest, some respite from all the stuff which is going on in the world. It's not just your personal lives, but also the stuff on Facebook, internet, on a university level, because many of us are amassing incredible amounts of information, but what good is it actually doing us? And I've heard people, especially monastics, even some senior teachers, or even especially senior meditation teachers, who, when they come across people who read and study extensively, sometimes they just say that you're just absorbing all this useless information, and it doesn't really have that much value at all. But it may be quite interesting, and you can certainly use it as raw material for your insight practice. So, especially the monastics, they tend to be much more selective what they're absorbing and taking in. You just don't want to take in any old rubbish, because it can be an obstruction for you. So, it could be things like, I'm studying Islam at the moment, because I really want to get a really general understanding of the Islamic experience, the way they practice, both the negative aspects of Islam, the positive aspects, and people's views and opinions, and people's both positive and negative, like critiques, really sort of high class professional people who analyze, who investigate. They do the documentaries, these kind of things, and it always comes up in the monastery. And because, say, like Buddhism, we don't believe in a creator God whatsoever, so that immediately gets us offside with the Muslim fraternity. But you can say things like, we don't believe in Allah, we don't believe in a creator God, but we believe that gods exist. because the whole creation principle with the Christian, Muslim, Hindu God, it comes from, you'll see it in the suttas. There's a specific sutta where at the end of when the universe contracted, at the last major crunch of the universe, when all the material in the universe was moving inwards, and you had the big crunch, and at that point, basically, essentially, many of the levels of rebirth are actually, they're temporarily suspended. They said like destroyed, but Corbin say temporarily suspended. They don't exist. And when the universe, at that point, and between that point and the Big Bang, many beings in samsara who are caught within this process of karma and rebirth are reborn largely. They only mentioned one particular realm. It's been about 2 years since I read it over, and one specific realm in that sutta. He said that the Buddha said the vast majority of beings are reborn in this. So they call it a Deva Loka world, like a world of angel beings. And when the Big Bang takes place and the universe expands, then those levels of rebirth, which had previously been destroyed, they basically come back into existence. This is something not everyone can relate to, and it's not something I haven't researched myself, but the vast majority of beings are reborn, say, in this higher world, and as the universe expands and these new worlds start to form, these higher worlds start to form, and because the earth is forming, and animal life, human life doesn't exist at that point. The earth is it's a soup. It's in a process of evolution, and so you have these higher realms, and this is what the Buddha said, the first being who descended from that higher world, where the vast majority of beings were in the karma process of rebirth, had been placed, where they existed there. It's like a karmic law which exists. And the first being who descended from that higher world, descended into the world of Mahabrahma. And they call it the world of Mahabrahma because that particular being, he is the being that the Christians, Hindus, and Muslims call Allah, call God, call the Creator. What would you call it? The Hindus call the Atman, the universal Atman. So he was the first to descend into that world, and those beings are the most powerful. The first one to descend in any of these worlds is always the most powerful and is the chief of all beings who follow on after that point. So he was there as the most powerful being, the greater radiance. Even some of these beings have psychic potential. They have the ability to move through the universe. I can't tell you exactly how far. I haven't seen too many sutra expositions on this point, but those beings who come after that initial being are less radiant, less powerful. The psychic range is less. The ability to move and the ability to wield, the ability to know and understand all this kind of thing. The psychic and the mental potential is less than that first being. So he would have been there for quite some time, and then over time he realized he was alone. And then he said, if only other beings could come to this place and then overcome it. That was the case. It could have been many hundreds of years, millions of years. They descended into that world with they call the Brahmaloka, Mahabrahma, and he was believed. He imparted to those other beings that he was the chief, he was the creator, because he was the only one there. He was watching the earth in a process of evolution. He was watching the universe in a process of evolution, and he was the only one there, and there was no one else to refute, substantiate anything different, any kind of different perspective, and so they believed that being who was firstborn in that world. So this is where you get this creation story. And so later in time, one of those beings fell from that world, the world of Mahabrahma, where that leading being that called the Creator God exists, and descended eventually onto the earth plane when human beings were in a more primitive state, like tribal existence, tribal culture, smaller groups, nomadic agricultural existence. And then one of those beings was called Jesus Christ, went on to be that being called Jesus Christ. And then he had that recollection of that past life, living in that high heaven world with Mahabrahma, this very, very high spiritual being who supposedly created the earth, moon, planets, and the universe. This is where this creation story comes into place, and you can easily double check the sutta, because this does come up for dispute sometimes between religions, but it makes perfect sense to us. So anyway, 7:45 almost, 7:43, and so what have we got to be doing now? 7:30 Dhamma talk. Okay, so we've got a sitting walking meditation till 8. I've got an incredible amount of time, and then we'll do some chanting, and then we've got a Q&A. Was there any? Actually, we'll leave it for the Q&A. It should be all right. And so just you can just sit if you wish. Something you might like with this particular sit, another little technique. It's a little bit bright, but you can still. This is still workable. And I know a gentleman who was very had a very, very busy mind, and he just couldn't get himself peaceful with anapanasati, with mantras, walking meditation. But what he found very effective was focusing on the blackness in the mind. So as you close your eyes and you see that blackness, the lights are quite strong, so you're still going to get a little bit of light coming in through one's eyelids. If you feel like it, you can sit at the back, you can sit, even grab a chair and sit in next door where the walking meditation path is. And just focus your attention on that, because what happens is you're drawing your attention away from thinking and feeling, and you're drawing your attention towards this blackness, this neutrality within the mind. And I've done it previously, and I find it quite effective, because all you've got is this blackness, and you're drawing attention away from this thinking mind. So just give it a spin and see what you think.